2.5 years ago, I wrote down a note in my ideas Discord that just said, Varrock is the Newark, New Jersey of RuneScape. And I'm not really sure what I meant by that. The only experience I have in Newark is being at its airport. I will say, if the airport is a reflection of the rest of the city, I may have been onto something. I really wanted to understand what I was trying to tell future me with this note that I jotted down. So I headed over to Varrock to take a closer look. And rather than look at it from a player's perspective, the best way to understand this would be to see it through the eyes of an NPC. First person POV, what would an NPC experience walking around this city? What would it be like to live in Varrock? So I wandered around a little bit, and I did make some baffling discoveries about this city. I started telling my wife Floodin about what I found, and she stops me mid-sentence. She says, forget Varrock. Go look at Ardougne. And she wouldn't elaborate on it. She had a very mysterious aura emitting from her when she said this to me. She insisted I go see for myself, so I did. And I'm glad she told me about it, because out of all of the major cities, all of the ones you have a teleport to, Ardougne is by far the worst city to live in RuneScape. And I'm not talking about West Ardougne over there. You don't need a video telling you that it's not ideal to start a family over there. I'm talking solely about East Ardougne, the familiar, seemingly normal side of the city. It turns out this normal side has a never-ending list of things wrong with it. And the deeper I looked, the more concerned I became for the citizens that reside here. There's a lot to look at. Now I want to get this out of the way. There's quite a few videos out there talking about the employment rate of NPCs in games, mostly from Any Austin, but I just have to assume that all the NPCs in this city are in fact employed, because all the ones that have any dialogue options at all simply state that they're too busy, they don't have time to talk to me, and just want me to go away. Which is fine, they don't have to talk to me. I get it. You know, I have a job too. I understand. Speaking of which, today's sponsor are my good friends over at NordVPN. There's not a lot of ways to make me angry. My ISP has figured out 3 of them. The biggest one is throttling my internet. You don't tamper with that of which is sacred to me, which is my internet. Don't touch it. I have had NordVPN enabled on my computer and phone at all times for years. It must just be some kind of wacky, goofy coincidence that when I'm not using Nord, my internet tends to slow down once or twice a day. My videos, they start to buffer. But when I toggle it back on, oh, look at that, fully loaded video. My websites aren't fucking looking like dial-up. They've got all these tools to just protect you while you're using the internet every day. Threat protection, the stay safe feature, a show not available in your country. Hey, what if you were magically there, says Nord. My internet quality of life has just exponentially increased. It is incredible how many times NordVPN has come in handy over the years. Go to nordvpn.com/Jimmy or use the link in the description to get a huge discount on a 2-year plan plus 4 bonus months. It's risk-free with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee. nordvpn.com/J1MMY. And back to the worst city in RuneScape. RuneScape NPCs are an enigma because RuneScape doesn't have a day and night cycle. Even though they can move around a little bit, the world seems to be on pause. All of them are permanently stationed exactly where they are in about a 6-tile radius forever. Modern RPGs tend to have NPCs on a schedule, pathing from home to work to where they like to hang out. MMORPG NPCs are not built the same way. They have to stay in their little 6-tile radius for eternity. They're not allowed to leave, and they seemingly don't have a desire to eat, sleep, do anything fun. They're all at a specific designated spot in the past, present, and future. It's not a relatable concept to humans that are experiencing time flowing normally, which is most of us. But that's when I started thinking, what if time did unpause here? How would Ardougne function? Would it survive? I want to see what they're working with. A little disclaimer, I will be spoiling some major parts of the Elf questline, so if you haven't done that yet, I suggest that you go do Song of the Elves really fast, real quick. Real easy task, and then come back. If you haven't done it and you plan on spacebarring through the whole thing, not caring about anything to do with this town, you're fine. Let's get this going. Ardougne's the capital of Kandrin, which is all of this. And since I know that a few of you are going to want to be the smartest kids in class, I'm very aware that the map in the game we experience is not canonically the actual scale of this world. I know. Everything that we know about this map and what we've played in is very extremely condensed. However, there's never been an actual full-scale map released, and all we truly know in reality is what we've experienced here in the game and the maps that they've provided. Mod Ash calls that discussion scale theory. I call it a bunch of gobbledygook that I'm not even gonna consider. All players, all NPCs only experienced this world, and that's the world I'm gonna look at. We're looking at this city the way that we know it. Now, according to Paul Gower, Ardougne was initially modeled after a French town. Bologna, I think it's called. Just as confusing of a word to see and try and pronounce as Ardougne is. So it adds up. But the architecture of that place doesn't look too similar to Ardougne. I did find a town called Strasbourg in France that does have some architecture that's pretty identical to the Ardougne buildings. I am by no means an expert in European architecture, but that building looks like these. Most players probably have roofs permanently disabled. They don't even know what a full building in RuneScape looks like. They've never seen that. You know, this might be the first time some of you are seeing the buildings in this town in their entirety. There's a very large wall separating East and West Ardougne. The West being quarantined from the East because they've got some sort of scary plague over there, a real scary plague. That's real. In contrast to the dirty, disgusting, collapsing West, East Ardougne's looking pretty nice. The amount of NPCs in Ardougne is going to differ depending on how far you are into the elf quest line. If you've completed Song of the Elves, there's going to be 110 of them wandering around. 53 of them being a warrior, a knight, a paladin, a hero, or an archer, meaning that almost 50% of the population is military. There are 31 enterable buildings, ranging from houses to workshops to a church, and the city's location within the world looks pretty nice at a glance. The surroundings are great for resources. There's a freshwater river flowing through the middle of the city. There's a dock for incoming and outgoing merchant ships, a mine filled with ore right outside the walls, extremely easy to get to. There's a ton of farmlands to grow anything they want. This town and its residents could absolutely be self-sufficient. I would mention the fishing nearby because Witch Haven's right there, and they run the fishing platform, but that city's going through a catastrophic crisis that has yet to be handled. Probably the scariest crisis the world's ever faced that is just left on a cliffhanger right now. Someone should really do something about it. They should have put the wall there instead of separating Ardougne. The wall should absolutely be moved, separating it from Witch Haven, because that's a problem. I don't know if people remember that. That's a huge problem going on over there. But anyway, as an alternative for fishing, there's the fishing guild right down the street. All sorts of fish swimming around Lake Heminster. A lot of sharks, lobsters, swordfish. I don't know how it's fitting all of those, but they're there. The town's got a market for people to peruse. There's a zoo for recreation. There's a beautiful castle to look up and see. It seems like a very nice, normal, comfortable city. Time has unpaused. RuneScape suddenly has a day and night cycle. After a 10-hour shift of wandering around the same 6 tiles, these NPCs get to go home and get a good night's sleep. Is what I would say if this was a fairy tale for children. Welcome to reality, everybody. While these 31 buildings could potentially house 110 citizens, some of these buildings don't have walls. 2 of the biggest buildings are private mansions that nobody has permission to enter. Some of them are banks. One's even a bank that's not a bank. I don't know what this place is. It's very mysterious. I'm not sure what's going on. Some buildings only have conference rooms or offices. And even if you are lucky enough to call one of these buildings home, chances are when you get there, you're not going to be very comfortable because most of the residents here have somehow, some way, completely spaced purchasing one of life's most essential things. With a population of 110 and 31 buildings, there are a whopping 11 beds present in Ardougne, 5 double beds and 6 single beds, giving 16 people a bed to sleep on. And that's if all the double beds are occupied by 2 people, which means they'd have to be married. But even being married doesn't guarantee that you own a bed. Edmund and Alrena, you know, the 2 NPCs that start the entire elf quest line, you know them, they are a bedless couple. Could not be comfortable if they wanted to. They do have a piano, however. They decided that was much higher on the priority list. We've got a bed in this house near the market. There's 2 ground beds in this little shack, but there happens to be no wall here, and it's right next to the port, so you know, a wave could interrupt sleep and ruin your life at any point. There's a giant pink bed upstairs in the 2 buildings that are connected, the pet insurance lady and the general store guys. But there's actually already a couple upstairs waiting around that bed. The Carnelian family, they've got 2 beds. They have a double bed and a single bed in the same room. I don't know if the kid sleeps there or the butler while the parents are on that one. I hope whoever's on the single bed's not a side sleeper. That would be rough. Jericho and Ross, they've got 3 beds between their 2 houses. Elena has a twin bed for herself. Gods be praised, Jimmy Dazzler can get a good night's sleep in his giant bed upstairs. And this shack in Northtown has 2 more tattered ground beds.
I know I said 11 beds. There's actually 13. I forgot about these. These are barely beds. It's reasonable that I forgot to count those. 2 more people can sleep, all right? 18 of the 110 can sleep.
And you may be thinking that I've forgotten a very important building here. I've completely skipped over the most prominent building in the whole city. Ladies and gentlemen, it pains me to inform you that Jagex may have created the very first castle in not only just gaming, but all of media. The first occupied castle ever to not include a bed. 33 NPCs, including the king and a gnome ambassador, are without beds in this 4-story war fortress. I expected at least the king to have a bed somewhere in here. I was almost certain I've seen a bed in here. They must have removed it. I checked the game's cache history, going back in time. Maybe they got rid of it for some reason. They didn't. There's never been a bed. No one is sleeping in this castle. The highest position of authority, the king of the capital of Kandarin, will find that the softest thing nearby is the carpet. That's as close as he's getting to a bed. And this castle had a basement added to it in 2019, which I think there might be some beds in that jail downstairs, but I'm not gonna count those. Only criminals have access to that. Not even the knights can go sleep in there, which is actually kind of funny because if you want a better chance of having a bed, you can commit a crime and get thrown in jail. They've made a whole version of this castle that's on fire. They've looked at this place before. Surely somebody noticed that something was missing from here that they should probably just add in real quick while no one's looking. We're gonna come back to this castle. I have a lot more to say about it, and there's no way I'm skipping that. The next biggest building is Handelmort Mansion. No surprise that guy is never there, because the closest thing he has to a bed is a bathtub. There's nowhere to be comfortable. He's even got a groundskeeper there. You know, those guys normally stay on the property, but yeah, that guy, there's no way he's staying there. The priest and the doctor, completely bedless. Here's a crazy thing going on. There's a little sewing shop near the market, and this lady's involved in mahogany homes. So hundreds of times a day, she's got adventurers coming in to offer their help, rebuilding her furniture. She's completely failed to ask a single person out of the tens of thousands of people who've been into her place for a bed. Because look, I know that sleep might be a foreign idea to these NPCs because they don't go back to their home. They don't need to sleep or eat or anything. So why would they have a bed? But again, my time pause thing, that's just a theory. There's no telling what kind of concept of time these NPCs truly have. They might canonically desperately be in need of beds. And I don't want to cross into another timeline here, but it kind of supports the idea of these NPCs actually yearning for a bed. In the main game, this issue was acknowledged and fixed on July 1st, 2008. Ardougne, Alcarid, and Lumbridge all received graphic overhauls to accompany the HD update. I didn't go count how many beds were added, but a lot of beds were added. The buildings in Ardougne looked like they could suddenly house its citizens. Proper bedrooms were created. Bedrooms with beds, to be exact. So many people got beds. The king got a couple beds even. Can you believe that? I gotta say, they made this town beautiful. I would not be opposed if Jagex overhauled it in a similar way. Even though like 90% of the overhaul had to do with details that the player base would never see for the rest of their lives, it looks amazing. Like, whoever did this really put some love into this town. There was so much attention to detail. It looked great. But alas, that was a different timeline. Old School Runescape's Ardougne and its citizens are still very much bedless. Most of you might be aware of this for one reason or another, but Ardougne has a problem with crime. It is beyond out of control. Adventurers are just destroying this town. Half the adventurers teleporting into Ardougne are just there to steal from shops, from the stall owners, the chest with the nature rune in it. Even the guards that are trying to prevent the crime, they're having the crime done to them. They're getting their pockets stolen out of every day forever. But that's just on the inside. The real problems, the real concerns that I have are taking place outside the city. Let's look south of town. First of all, we've got a necromancer tower. Those guys are typically not good. We've got the Tower of Life, which morally, probably one of the worst things that humanity's ever created. We've got General Khazard's prison death camp, feeding families to his aggressive exotic pets. There's the underground sewers, which lead to the Haziel cult, who've resurrected probably one of the most dangerous beings in the history of mankind. That guy's just here now. And to top it all off, an all-out war between the Khazard troops and the gnomes, just a stone's throw away from the local zoo. South of town is a shit show. I highly advise that citizens don't wander that way at all, ever. For anything. And I don't want to cause any alarm here, but I just happen to notice this that I don't think anyone in Ardougne has ever noticed. Those Khazard troops, they've got multiple cannons pointed directly at the walls of Ardougne. I'm just a little weary as to why these cannons are facing 180 degrees away from the war. There's no way that having the cannons pointed that way are going to help them with the gnomes. Aiming cannons at a city right outside its borders is a textbook declaration of war. That's great. This is a crazy thing to do. Don't go south. Of course, as an East Ardougne citizen, you're not allowed to go west, nor would any of them really want to, considering what they've been told about that place. The only attraction over there is the entrance to the underground pass, which I doubt any of them are going to have a great time in. Probably one of the worst decisions they could make, going into that fucking place. If you're gonna choose a direction to go, north is probably the safest one. That's as long as you stay on the path. If you stray off that path even a little bit, you'll find yourself right outside of a goblin cave. Now, I've always known goblins to be fairly easy to fight, but I've been watching a lot of anime recently, and one of them in particular has really skewed my view of goblins in the absolute worst way possible. Please don't go in the goblin cave. Don't enter goblin caves. I don't like them. I hate them now. To the east, we've got the Legends Guild, which these citizens will absolutely never be able to enter, nor should they. It's the most not worth it thing to gain access to. There's that very resourceful mine before you hit the Legends Guild, but that mine happens to be infested with grizzly bears. A lot of them. Unpredictable apex predators capable of running at 30 miles per hour. Just a whole group of them. And I don't really see a lot of animals in the food chain around there, so they're most likely starving, which means don't go to the mine. Mine somewhere else. There's also the very fucked up town of Witch Haven. Like I said, there needs to be a wall there. That's so important. We either need to go and solve that problem, like now, or we need to put up a wall if we don't plan on doing anything. Anything can happen there. I don't know what's in store for that town, but it should probably be sectioned off so no one accidentally goes there. So it really doesn't matter which direction you exit the town. There's an alarming amount of risks, life-threatening risks. You are much better off staying inside this crime-ridden city. It's a fucking terrible city that has a shack with a lever that teleports you to one of the most dangerous places in the game for no reason. Just stay there. You're way safer there. But the true problem is if any of these big risks become a legitimate threat to Ardougne, if they become aggressive, that is trouble. When East Ardougne and its people has to take a defensive stance of any kind, I am terrified for them. This place has a very long history of mistreating its people. One of the most untrustworthy governments who's manipulated these citizens for so long and so hard. There's just not a lot of smiling happening here, most likely. Not a lot of morale here. So how would they fare against any form of attack or invasion? The biggest defensive tool that this city has for itself is, of course, its castle. Castles are incredible structures. Their significance in medieval times is immeasurable. Castles are such good defensive mechanisms that they made for great offense. William the Conqueror literally built 36 castles on his offensive. He used them as forward operating bases. Castles are fucking awesome is what I'm getting at. But unfortunately for East Ardougne, their castle is one of the worst designed, poorly equipped castles in the history of any fantasy setting ever. Everything from its position in the city to its decor, what equipment they have in there, the garrison that they have. I don't even know where to start talking about this stupid castle. This castle's layout is pretty insulting to the garrison who's posted up here. I can't wrap my head around the second floor. The corridors on both sides are just a gauntlet of paladins, both having a chest, a mysterious chest at the end. If I was stationed here as a soldier, I might be inclined to think that I've been posted up in this hallway to be cleared by an adventurer on their way to that chest at the end. The idea here is no different than a fucking WoW dungeon. How does this layout benefit anybody? How does it, good does this do the kingdom? And you'd think that these heavily guarded chests would actually be worth it to go and get to. And they're not, but don't worry everybody. The interior design is saved because there's not one, not two, not three. There's 11 tables on the second floor. Sure, we don't have any chairs at any of them, but we've got all these tables, and that's great. Everybody on this floor can have their own table. What a great thing. I mean, I know you guys agree with this. You're probably at a table right now. How nice is that? Now imagine 11 of them. You don't have to imagine it. It's right here on the second floor of the Ardougne Castle. Now, when I say throne room, what do you imagine? What comes to your mind? I don't know what you're thinking of, but it's not this. You didn't think of it. 0 people conjured this throne room in their head when I said that. You can't even call this a throne room. This is a supply closet with a chair. It's an embarrassing room. Generations of kings have come and go and never did anything about this. And you know, I get it. The king, he's an important guy. Can't be that important because that's his room, but he is seen as an important guy. But the amount of portraits is disturbing. I'd understand like 1 per floor, but there are 4 of them in view immediately upon entering the second floor. And then when you look slightly over there, there's 3 pictures of the same mountain landscape. This is way before photocopying existed. That's not a thing, which means some guy was ordered to paint the same picture 4 times here, just so they could all be placed next to each other. And then again with mountains. Some good news about this castle is it has a tub. That's right, you can take a bath in this castle, assuming that it's not only for the king, who would have to stroll down to the first floor to use it. And whoever does get the luxury of bathing, they've got a great view. That's right, 2 more photos of this king. There are 7 identical paintings of this king in the castle. That's 7 more paintings than there are beds. Castles are fortresses of war, except for this one. These little cross-like things all across the walls, they look very identical to arrow slits. The placement of some of these arrow slits, they're not really making a fraction of sense. I tried looking for castles, to see, maybe this was decorative. I found some pictures of Arundel Castle, which has some cross-like looking designs that could be arrow slits, but the ones on this castle definitely resemble more like traditional, like what you Google when you look up arrow slits. It's too many holes. We've also got some cannon problems. On this here roof, we've got cannons facing 3 of the 4 directions. Those 3 being the directions that have the cannons directly aimed at the city. And I don't know if you recall, but that direction is the direction that seized this castle easily. But thank God we've got cannons facing the local church and Jimmy Dazzler's house. That second one's probably justified. But how do they not point any at the town that they're feuding with? And this cannon in the back line, I mean, the projectiles of this thing, they're just going directly at the guy in front shooting that cannon. If they face this thing upwards at all, it's just gonna go straight into the market or into Witch Haven or the ocean. This is, why is this here? Face it the other way at least. The firepower is just completely wasted here, which honestly mostly has to do with the placement of the castle. Most castles that I've seen have either been at the very back of town or on a giant hill away from whatever village it's for. I couldn't find any that were smack dead center middle of the city. If a force is invading the city, the walled city, they've got to get through the townsfolk, the peasants, before they get to the important nobility, the royal bedless nobility. Because Ardougne wasn't always split up. This was a decision to put the castle in the center. It's got almost a moat. The bridge is not a drawbridge, so that doesn't help anybody. It's kind of elevated on a little hill, which I guess would make it slightly more difficult to put a ladder on. But as we've seen, we had 0 issues charging right through the front gate and fetching the most important guy inside. It was one of the most easygoing raids of all time. Recruit difficulty, castle storming. I think the best placement for this castle would have been on the mountains above Underground Pass towards West Ardougne. If they put it over there, I mean, that's perfect. You're elevated in mountains, overlooking the entire city. There's no way that anything is getting there from behind because you've got just all of the mountains behind you. And you've got the Underground Pass right below, which is a badass thing to have below a castle. Sentence prisoners to the Underground Pass. That's perfect. That would be so good. They screwed up this castle before they even started building it, once they decided that was where they were gonna put it. For the last security thing, going back to the gnomes at war, even though the Khazard troops are in no way affiliated with Ardougne, the Khazard troops are positioned as if they've been deployed from Ardougne. Anybody who just views this battlefield will kind of conclude that clearly those guys came from that city that they're in front of. It looks like they're defending the walls of Ardougne. All it takes is one gnome commanding officer to piece that puzzle together in his head. We've got a gnome invasion on Ardougne. Giant tortoises, spirit magic, little level 2 gnomes coming and getting your ankles. Be a nightmare. And not to mention those tree gnome guys, we've already helped them reestablish their spirit tree connection. So they're telling Gnome Stronghold, we've got ourselves a gnome sandwich conquering Ardougne. They close in on it with ease. There's like 50 military personnel here, maybe a few patriotic citizens if they woke up on the right side of the bed. They don't have this. Ardougne is lost, is what I'm saying. If those gnomes snap one day, they've conquered Kandarin if they decide to do this. Gnomedarin is what they call it now. This is gonna happen one day, by the way. This is a gnome town soon. Being a working citizen of this town just has to be miserable. There doesn't seem to be any real recreational activity going on here. Like, they've got the zoo, but it's not very fun to look at animals when you've got gnomes being slaughtered in your peripheral vision. There's no one perusing the market. If anyone's there, they're just stealing things. No shop owner or citizen wants to talk to you or anything to do with you. The people that don't seem to be on the clock are shut-ins that just kind of wander around their room all day. And any ordinary citizen I try to talk to is just baffled about the plague being fake, which I get, it was a big deal, but surely they've thought about anything else in the last 6 years that they could bring up and, you know, strike up a conversation about. Even at the bar, there's only the bartender and a drunk lady that everyone objectifies. Men only want one thing, and it's her cape. Elena's not home, nor will she ever be. She's abandoned that building. Maybe she'll offer her bed to her parents. Maybe. There seems to be some kind of pottery class set up outside the bar. That pottery oven's probably been used 7 times in the last 20 years, so no one's having fun here. This place sucks. The government is awful to live under, constantly surrounded by war and disease on both sides. Every other person they see is a guy who could instantly kill them because they're military with weapons. The church is always empty. Your feelings on that will vary depending on who you are, but it's objectively true. These citizens hung their king in the market. That's the closest thing to a recreational activity that they've ever experienced. There are no NPCs on the 2nd floor of any building, and I realized very fast why that is. Because if they were to hang out in those 2nd floors, the dust from the ceiling would constantly be trickling down on their head because some asshole adventurer, maybe even thousands of them, are constantly stomping on the rooftops forever. And no one has the guts to speak up and say anything. No one has tried talking to these people, which, I mean, if they're running on those rooftops, they've got 90+ agility, which means they're probably not great to talk to anyway, so I don't blame them. There's just not a lot of happy here. That's the state that Ardougne is in. Maybe the new king will have a plan in place in the next 10 years, hopefully, to rejuvenate this place. Because without a doubt, this is the worst place to live in RuneScape. I really hope for the NPC's sake that, you know, time remains paused so they don't have all these problems to run into, like sleeping or being happy. If you'd like me to look deeper into the lives of other citizens in other towns, just let me know. This was fun. I've never done anything like this before. I would love to measure the misery levels of other residents, but I think that's all I have. I hope you guys are all as ready as I am for 2026. You know, they say as life goes on, you know, the years feel faster. But I feel like it's been 2025 for 3 years. I don't know why. It's overstayed its welcome, it feels like. So I'm excited. I'm excited for this 2026 year. It's gonna be good for all of us, I decided. If you're listening to this right now, we're gonna have the best year of our lives together. Whatever, man. 2026, it's our year. Year of the horse. Follow me on the horse game if you play that. That's all I got. Let's make it a good year. Take care, everyone.